give you one more little idea. There's something called the law of diffusion of innovations. It's a bell curve. The left side of the bell, the first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority. The next 34% are your late majority. And the last 16% are your laggards. The only reason the laggards use touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. On the left side of the curve, that innovator and early adopter population, these are the people who are very comfortable making intuitive decisions. These are the people very comfortable trusting their guts. These are the people who paid $40,000 or $50,000 to buy flat-screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. These are the people who stood in line for 6 hours to buy iPhones when they first came out, even though they could just go to the store the following week and buy one off the shelf. It had nothing to do with the technology. It had everything to do with them. What the law of diffusion tells us, however, is that you cannot achieve mass market success until you achieve between 15 and 18% market penetration. This is a tipping point, the tipping point. And it's easy to get 10% of the people to be loyal to you. Now, right now, we have 10% of our customers and 10% of our employees who love us and they don't know why. The problem is you can never get the system to tip. You cannot achieve mass market success. You cannot get all those people to come and be interested in your red hat until you get that 15 to 18%. I'll give you a quick example. TiVo has what we believe is the recipe for success. They were extremely well funded when they started. They have the best product on the market from the day it was introduced to this day. They have first mover's advantage. They've got brilliant engineers, and they have a market awareness. They have brand awareness up the wazoo. We use TiVo as a verb, and everybody's heard of TiVo, right? Even if you don't use their product. Now, when TiVo launched their product, however, they told people what it did. And by the way, TiVo is a financial failure. They've never made money, and their stock, when IPO, launched at about $40 or $50, then plummeted and has never traded above $10 ever, except for a couple little blips. Right? TiVo is a commercial and financial failure, and the reason is because they went to the mass market and they attempted to convince the mass market what they do. And they said to the mass market, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, and records on your behalf. Sounds good, but nobody bought one because the cynical, practical majority said, I don't need one, I don't want one, I don't like one, you're scaring me, and they didn't buy one. Now imagine if TiVo had talked directly to those early adopters and those innovators. Imagine if TiVo had talked to the people who are willing to pay a premium or suffer inconvenience to be a part of something that they believe. Imagine if TiVo had said to that population, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, it skips commercials, it memorizes your viewing habits and records on your behalf without you even asking. All of a sudden, with the exact same reasons, the message has profoundly changed. Because it's not what your product does that distinguishes it. It's what your product does that serves as the tangible proof of why it exists in the first place. But you have to say why it exists. You have to say why your company exists. You have to say why you do what you do, and what you do will serve as the tangible proof and the way for people to rationalize it to themselves. It would have been an entirely different game had TiVo started with why. And don't talk to me about cable has distribution, blah, blah, blah. People regularly go out of their way and suffer inconvenience to be a part of or buy a product that represents who they believe. That's not the problem. It's that TiVo started with what, not why. I'll end with my final example, my favorite example, which is Martin Luther King and how he did it. In 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. There were no invitations sent out, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? How many emails and reminders and tweets and Facebook status updates did you get just to show up on a phone call today? And here's 250,000 people showing up in Washington in 1963. Right? How do you do that? Dr. King was not the only man in America who knew what had to change to bring about civil rights in this country. Dr. King was not the only great orator of the day. Dr. King was not the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, he suffered a little less than most because he was off at university. What Dr. King offered and what his experience was not unique. It was not special. The difference was he had a gift. He went around and he told people, I believe, I believe, I believe. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and made it their own. And they told people what they believed. And those who believed what they believed, they took that cause and they made it their own, and they told people what they believed. And lo and behold, the word spread, and 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up to hear Dr. King? How many of them showed up for Dr. King? The answer is zero. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed that inspired them to get on a bus, travel for 8 hours, and stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of the summer to hear Dr. King speak. Seeing him speak, being there that day, was simply one of the things they did in their lives to prove what they believed. It was one of the what's to their own why. And by the way, Dr. King gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. It's what he believed. It's not how he was doing it that inspired a nation to rally and change the course of this nation. That is great leadership. And great companies, by the way, regardless of what they do, regardless of their industry, regardless of their size, function like social movements. This is why we say of great companies, they are cult-ish. And we say of their leaders, people, it's like a cult over there with that guy. It's not an accident we use these terms to describe a business. It's because it functions like a social movement. And the people who work there love working there. I make no distinction between a customer and an employee. It's a behavioral difference. That's all. I either believe what you believe and I want to work for you, or I believe what you believe and I want to buy your products. And I say all the time, people who believe what you believe will work for you with blood and sweat and tears, and people who don't believe what you believe will work for your money. The responsibility of the founder of the company, the responsibility of the CEO of the company is one thing and one thing only, to be the why. You have to preach it, you have to put it into words, you have to personify it, and you have to give people the reason they're showing up to work. They will figure out how to do it. They will figure out what to do next. Your role is to make sure that they are crystal clear on why they showed up to work that day. Innovation does not happen at the top. Most CEOs have one big idea in their life, and it was the idea they formed their company around, and that's it. Great ideas come from the edges of a company. The reason Apple is so innovative is not because Steve Jobs comes up with all the ideas. It's because Steve Jobs has created an environment in which people can come up with great ideas. He gives them a reason to come to work. I want you to come to work, and I want you to find existing monopoly industries or products and give individuals the opportunity to challenge the status quo. He did it with Apple, where they challenged Big Blue, IBM. Then they challenged Microsoft. Then they challenged the music industry. Then they challenged the phone industry. And they'll do it again in movies and video if you're next. The point is that Jobs came up with none of those things. He didn't come up with the iPhone. He didn't come up with iTunes. People inside his organization who knew why they came to work figured out how we can bring this cause to life. Jobs is a great leader for one reason only. We know what he stands for, we know what he believes, and he ensures that everything that comes out of his company proves what he believes. His company is one of the what's to his why. It's one of the things that he's doing in his life to prove what he believes. There are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or influence, but those who lead inspire us. And whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead not for them, but for ourselves. We follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. The capacity to start with why is for those people who want to inspire those around them, or for those people who want to find somebody who inspires them.